I feel like life only gets harder the older you get. Like when I was younger, there used to be things that I used to stress about. And I realized it really wasn't anything to be stressed about. As you become an adult, you start to have real problems. The first thing that people stress about when they become an adult is really just how you gonna survive, how you gonna find a stable job, a stable career. Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I feel like that's the most stressful thing. And nowadays, there's really just not much guidance when it comes to what you need to do to find your passion, to find stability, and to be happy. I think that's why, more and more adults, more and more people in general are just becoming more depressed. You got people with college degrees that regret going to college, regret getting that degree because at the end of the day, they still had to work a minimum wage job anyways, or work a job that wasn't their field of study, and they feel like they just wasted a bunch of money, and now they have 100K in debt. But they would have been way better off if they hadn't went to college, if they just got a job instead. At least they wouldn't be 100K in debt. So they feel like not only did they waste their time, waste their life away, but now they thinking about how they gonna pay it off. That's a huge burden going forward. And on top of that, I feel like, most people struggle to find a relationship nowadays. When you're in your 20s, you kind of tell yourself you got time, there's no need to rush, just focus on yourself, just grind and build yourself up, and eventually you're gonna find the one. But then you get closer to your 30s and you start to panic a little bit, but then you try to reassure yourself that you still got some time. There's no need to rush. And then you finally hit your 30s and you realize you still don't 100% got your life together. You start to worry about the economy, worry about if you're going to get laid off. And on top of that, you worry that you might not find somebody, especially when you're single in your 30s. But then you still try to reassure yourself that there's no rush, that it's okay to be single. And then there's people that, they worry about everything because they're not financially stable. They live paycheck to paycheck. But then there's also people that they could save money, they decide not to, or they don't know how, or nobody really taught them financial literacy. So as soon as they get paid, they spend the whole paycheck and they live paycheck to paycheck that way. But sometimes I wonder, don't they get anxiety living like that? Because some people are one paycheck away from being homeless. They literally can't survive without seeing their next paycheck. So if the economy gets bad and there's mass layoffs, sometimes I wonder, like, aren't they worried? Like, they don't got no emergency fund. They ain't got no backup plan. So it's really just the people that worry about financial stability. And then there's people that live paycheck to paycheck, but they really don't even want to save up at all. They live day by day. I feel like, to a certain extent, I feel like everybody is struggling in some way, and everybody's just living day by day. And you could plan for the future, you could try to be prepared for the future, but you don't really know how it's going to play out. There's always going to be things that you don't expect that kind of, takes you off of the path that you want to take, and it's really up to you to get back on that path. And I feel like the older people get, and when they're not where they want to be, they start to think to themselves, are they really going to be able to do everything that they wanted to in their lifetime? And when you first hit your 30s, if you still ain't find that relationship, find someone that you want to be married to, you might still say, oh, you still in your 30s, you still got time. But then when you get closer to your 40s and you still don't got everything together, then you might start to panic because you start to feel like you're running out of time. And a lot of people start to settle. They start to just settle for someone that they don't really love. Maybe that relationship is just good enough. They're just a good enough person. They do just enough for you to want to marry them. But that type of relationship really don't got no love. That type of relationship usually lacks intimacy, right? They're not really sexually attracted to each other. They don't really love each other. They're kind of just friends. They're kind of like roommates when they live together. But there's no love. But sometimes, you've been in a relationship for so long, you're scared to start all over again. You don't know if you could find somebody else again, or you don't want to go through the whole dating game again from the beginning because you feel like you already put in so much work that you don't want to start all over. But I mean, that type of relationship where, when you get married, you're just settling down, I don't think they're gonna be truly happy. It's more of just getting married for the sake of just getting married, just being together, just to have someone there. And sometimes, they are together forever, but they're not happy, or they end up divorcing and they ended up just wasting more time. Sometimes, like, yeah, you might have wasted a lot of years, but you about to waste 20 more years, 30 more years of your life being with someone that you don't really love. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with the fact that they put in so much time. But it's like sometimes you got to cut your losses short. You already put in 10 years. Do you want to put in another 20 years? Sometimes you just got to wake up. Let's say everything does go pretty well and then, you start a family. I feel like, surviving in this economy with all the inflation, like, it's kind of hard to just put food on the table and just enjoy life when you're by yourself. Imagine trying to feed an entire family. It just gets more stressful. And then on top of that, you get older, you might start having health issues. And it's just like, life was hard when you were healthy. And now it's even harder when you're not healthy, when you gotta worry about your health. And not only do you have to worry about feeding yourself, you gotta be able to feed your family. And it's just more things. And I feel like a lot of people can't manage it very well. Sometimes they let some of their old problems just like stick around. They never really solved it. They procrastinate or they just kind of ignore it. And then when all these new problems come as you get older, it starts to add on top of the old problems. And that's when people get overwhelmed. I feel like people who manage their problems well are the ones that solve their problems as they come. So then when they have a new problem, they done already solved the old problem. So you're not overwhelmed. You only got one problem in front of you. And I think it's about having as less problems as possible. Because you're going to have problems regardless. But it's better to have one problem than 10 problems that's been building up. And there's people that want to travel the world. They want to do more things. They want to have more experiences. Experiences is what would make them happy. Just seeing new things, doing new things, not the same old things every day. Maybe that's why people don't really like their job, because it's the same thing every day. It becomes a monotonous task. But some people don't know that. They spend all their money on materialistic things and wonder why, they're not as happy as they could be or should be. But the world could be a beautiful place. When you go on a nice vacation, when you go to a new place and have new experiences, I feel like that makes people more happy. Going outside instead of just always staying inside, playing video games, watching movies all day. But sometimes I feel like a lot of times, we're not happy because we're always chasing that next thing. And it's like what was once what we always wanted, once we got it, it didn't mean much anymore. It no longer was satisfying. So we chase after the next thing. And that type of mindset really is unhealthy. We never take the time to just breathe. We always thinking about the next thing that we could get. And then we stress about not being able to achieve it. But sometimes I feel like, I don't know what the right answer is. Because if you have happy days, you're going to have sad days. It's yin and yang. So if you don't want to be sad, then you can't be happy. It's kind of like what Buddha said. You have to give up all your wants and desires and only live with what you need. Once you no longer want things, once you no longer desire things, and you only live with what you need, basic necessities, food, shelter. But I feel like that puts you in a state of mind of just being neutral. You're not happy, you're not sad, you're just in the middle. Maybe that's as close as a human can get to happiness and maintain that state of mind consistently. Because if you're happy, you're gonna need more to stay happy, because we always chase pleasure. We always chase after the next thing. It's never enough. There's really no way to be 100% happy all the time. Everybody's gonna go through some tough situations. But if you never go through any tough situations, how are you supposed to get smarter? How are you supposed to get stronger? A lot of times the only reason why we're able to adapt, the only reason why we get smarter is because we've been through things. We learn from everything we've been through. I feel like life is just an endeavor of hardships and just getting through it. And it's really just up to you to create that happiness. And you're gonna have hard moments, but that's okay. You have to fight through those hard moments, enjoy life. Because the way I look at it, if you're gonna be sad in X amount of days in life, you don't want to worry and be sad on your happy days, because you're only going to have X amount of happy days in life. So be happy when you're happy and get through them tough times.